It's Andy Coppins, it's Talking 10, and it's the B1G Rewind Show where we give you each and every week's recap of what took place in Big Ten football. And if you're watching this, that means week 11 is in the books. And I'm calling this one Separation Weekend. And that was really easy because I think there are two big separations that happened. Obvious one is that, well, the Wisconsin Badgers took home the West Division title in a no-doubter at home against the Iowa Hawkeyes. They win the Heartland Trophy. The other trophy game also separated, I think, teams that wanted to get some energy at the end of the season. And we're talking Minnesota and Nebraska. And then finally, we've got separation and a clear path for somebody to take that East Division crown. And that somebody is the Ohio State Buckeyes, who absolutely crushed Michigan State 48-3 in that contest. So congratulations have to go out to the Wisconsin Badgers first and foremost for me. And it also brings up the thing that I've been harping on for the past couple of weeks, and I'm going to do it again because no team did what the Badgers did on defense in the Big Ten or across the country in my book on Saturday. Yeah, the final score was 38-14, and while you might say that 38-14 also means, well, they gave up 2 touchdowns, how is that more dominating than a 48-3 scoreline? I'm pretty sure when you give up 66 total yards and you hold them to a goose egg in a conference game, whether or not you're at home, whether or not your offense was playing at its best, that's dominating football. And for me, as we go forward, given what we saw with Notre Dame losing and all the chaos that happened within the top 10, right in front of the Wisconsin Badgers, you have to think that at some point in time, the College Football Playoff Committee has got to take the Badgers seriously, especially on the defensive side of the football. I mean, what more do you want them to do? They just took an opponent that was ranked number 20 in the country, according to you, put up 55 points, sure, at home, but against Ohio State last weekend, and held them scoreless on offense. Nate Stanley got zip, zero, zilch, nada. He looked garbage for most of this game. Akram Wadley, who? And then you had Jonathan Taylor go for 152 yards. Wisconsin scores 38 points, and Alex Hornibrook overcomes his 2 interceptions. Now, sure, you can say, well, yeah, but he threw both of those for pick sixes. And there's no doubt that there's a flaw with Wisconsin's offense. I don't think anybody can rightly say that that's not the case. But take a look at that top 10 and tell me a team that's not flawed. In fact, take a look at that top 4 from this past weekend and tell me a team that's not flawed. There is not a team that is playing better defense in the country than the Wisconsin Badgers. And if they don't get in, even if they're 13-0 and they don't get into the college football playoff, I think it's the biggest crock of crap I've seen in a long time. Because what it really means is that defense doesn't matter at all. And that's baloney in my book. My second one here is obviously Ohio State. OH, a question mark O. Not only did they troll Apple in the process of beating the living daylights out of Michigan State, they got Mike Weber going. JT Barrett had 183 yards, 14-21, a really impressive performance for him. And of course, they're starting to finally get something out of their wide receiver group. But most importantly, for me, they finally found their defensive dominance once again. Seeing a theme here, folks, but it's true. A week after giving up 55 points, the defensive line not showing up, the linebackers having issues, none of that happened this Saturday at home. Credit to them for regrouping and coming out and absolutely laying the wood to somebody this week. So, big ups to Ohio State, big ups to Wisconsin. It's pretty much this. If Wisconsin wins out and Ohio State wins out, you're likely to see 2 top 10 teams in the college football playoff rankings going at it for the Big Ten championship. I think the biggest question is, what else is going to happen around college football? And do the Buckeyes even have a shot, if they were to be the team that wins this Big Ten championship game, of getting into the college football playoff? I think only time is going to tell as far as that question, realistically, sitting here today, it is going to be really difficult to say that they deserve it, especially since they have that loss to Iowa, who just got trounced, and Oklahoma, who just pushed themselves into likely the Big 12 title game and the college football playoff berth, at least in terms of controlling their own destiny. So unless more chaos happens, it's really difficult to see Ohio State get there, but I can see a path forward for them, and it's going to be real interesting to watch going forward. My third takeaway here, we're going to go back to the West Division, and we're talking about Nebraska and Minnesota for the $5 Bits of Broken Chair trophy. Because, folks, woof. I mean, if there was not a bigger indictment of Mike Riley's era, especially after Bob Diaco went out and called out his entire defensive unit, and then they gave up 54 points to Minnesota. Demery Croft, 183 yards, 3 touchdowns on just 10 carries. The quarterback did that to you. Obviously, Tanner Lee going out at halftime did not help, reportedly with an illness in that situation. It didn't help much. Patrick O'Brien just really didn't have it. And it really didn't matter if he was good or not good because, was that Nebraska defense awful. Nebraska sits at 4-6 and 3-4 in the Big Ten, and their path forward is not an easy one at all. Because if you take a look at the Huskers' schedule, we're looking at Penn State and at home to Iowa. Now, sure, Iowa gave up, didn't play well at all this weekend, but Iowa's offense is capable of exploding on good defenses, and Nebraska's is not that. And then the other part of this is Minnesota. After looking rather anemic, it seems like now that they figured out that Demery Croft is the guy that they wanted to have at quarterback going forward, they figured out how to play with him, and it's starting to snowball into productive results in the win column. So Minnesota 5-5, 2-5. If you take a look at their schedule, the Gophers, well, they've got that big date at the end of the year with the Wisconsin Badgers, and they've also got a date against Northwestern next weekend in Evanston. If they could win that game, they have a chance to spoil Wisconsin's perfect season. And that's the scenario I laid out at the beginning of the year if you listen to the Talking 10 podcast. I said I could see a very easy scenario where Wisconsin is 11-0. Minnesota needs this game to ensure themselves a chance at playing in a bowl game, and they get it done against Wisconsin some way, somehow. And it's exactly what's setting up. So if you're Badger fans, circle that game. Not so much the Michigan game for me as the game that you really got to watch out for. Because 13 in a row in that series, some way, somehow, something strange is going to happen where Minnesota actually wins one of those. And it might just come in a couple of weeks. At least, especially if Demery Croft and company can get that read option to be successful against a really aggressive Badger defense. Outside of that, not a whole lot to really talk about. Oh, but this. Saquon Barkley, where have you gone? Everybody wants to talk about his spectacular plays, and he had another one this weekend. But he was not very good overall. And as far as I'm concerned, he's probably the second or third option for me out of the Big Ten if we're talking about Heisman Trophy options. I would say Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin, who continues to put up 150-yard plus performances like they're going out of style, or even JT Barrett could make a great argument to be better, at least for the Heisman Trophy presentation, than Saquon Barkley is right now. Because at some point in time, you are a running back, and if you can't get 100-yard games as a running back, you should not be a Heisman Trophy contender. We'll see what goes on, obviously, with the rest of this season. I'm pretty sure that no matter who it is coming out of the Big Ten that goes to New York City as a Heisman Trophy candidate, they're not beating Baker Mayfield. That's as good as done as far as I'm concerned. The Oklahoma quarterback has done spectacular things all season long and is showing that he is a well-deserved Heisman Trophy winner should that actually happen. As for the Big Ten, when we take a look at going forward here, Week 12, obviously, when you take a look at the Badgers taking on Michigan, 11 a.m. Central, ESPN Game Day in Madison, a week after BTN Tailgate was there. And you've also got Maryland, Michigan State, then the supposed big game of Nebraska, Penn State, which might just be a how can Nebraska find another way to make sure Mike Riley gets fired scenario. So with that being said, thank you so much for tuning in to this week's edition of the B1G Rewind Show. Don't forget, we'll have plenty of coverage, whether it's the podcast or all sorts of things this week, talking about Wisconsin, Michigan, talking about all sorts of really awesome stuff. And of course, as always, follow me on Twitter at AndyOnFootball. Follow us on Twitter at TalkingB1G. And don't forget to visit the website, talking10.com. For everybody on staff, thank you for tuning in and keep on living the B1G life.